Hello everyone, today I'm going to be ranking every G.I. Joe from 1982. So in 1982 we had 13 different Joes make their first appearances. So the way I'm going to do this ranking list, it's all just my personal opinion, right? There's this saying that every Joe is someone's favorite, so my opinions are not law. And if you disagree with, placing one of my Joes, let me know in the comments. I'd love to know why you think this guy is better than what I've listed him as. So the way I'm going to be, ranking these guys is, influenced by their comic book appearances, their shows, and even a little bit by their action figures. But it's primarily going to be character based. I might do it, a ranking in the future by just action figures specifically. But for this ranking, it's going to be, you know, their personalities, their character. So without further ado, let's get started. Ooh, and one more caveat. So if these figures were released in certain times, some of them have like different versions, right? So a prime example is Hawk actually right here. So if he comes up another time in like the 1986 version where he becomes a general, he's going to have a different ranking. Same thing with like Ninja Force Scarlet, Ninja, Snake Eyes, so stuff like that. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. First up, we have Colonel Hawk. So this is before Hawk became general. Um, in the comics, he's like the team leader. He's at the head. He's usually leading the attacks too, which is pretty cool. Um, Even though I said these are going to be character based, his action figure kind of stinks. So that is going to influence me a little bit, unfortunately. But for that reason, I think Hawk. General Hawk is S tier, right? But Colonel Hawk's definitely not to that tier. I think I'm gonna have to throw him at an A. He's pretty cool. He does a lot of cool things, but I don't think he's got that edge to throw him into S tier just yet. But up next we have Breaker. Now Breaker is really cool. He's one of my personal favorites. He's the first Joe communications and tech guy, and a little bit of a spoiler, he's one of the few Joes that actually die in the mainline comics. So he's got an edge over a lot of people over that, and his death is pretty sad, especially for being one of the original 13 guys, right? His action figure is kind of bland, just military green fatigues. He's got the comm set, the backpack, so he's kind of cool. I think I'm gonna throw him in an A for that, yeah. Now up next we have Clutch. Clutch is awesome. He's definitely one of my favorites of the original 82 line. So I think I'm gonna throw him in S. He does a lot of cool things in the comics. He's one of the main reoccurring characters. He's got a lot of team ups with, especially like Rock and Roll. He knows the Vamp driver. He came out with the Vamp. He's pretty iconic for that. He's got the cool beard and mustache. The action figure, actually captures him pretty well. So definitely S tier. Now an action figure that did not catch the character very well is Zap. So yeah, his action figure kind of sucks. In the comics, his like main defining feature, because a lot of the 13 original Joes look very similar to each other, but the way you can tell Zap apart is, besides the big old bazooka, is his mustache, and his action figure didn't have that. They're definitely kind of cutting costs back then. That makes sense, but kind of lacking in that regard. Now in the comics, Zap didn't do a whole lot, especially in the original run. He pops up a few times in the original and the newer run. Never does anything like super cool, but he's a bazooka trooper. And because he's a bazooka trooper, I think he's B. I really like the bazooka troopers, and Zap is kind of cool. Next up we have Flash. So this is a character that did almost nothing. He looks kind of cool. He's nostalgic for me because he's one of the first action figures I had in the 25th anniversary line. He's got that orange padded jumpsuit, the big old laser rifle. But character wise, he's kind of a blank slate. He doesn't do much of anything in the comics. He pops up a few times in like the original 10 or so issues, but for that reason, he's not going to be super high on the list. I'm thinking let's throw him at a C tier, because he just doesn't do a whole lot. I remember in one of the runs when they attack Springfield for the first time, I think, Flash is sent on this special mission to destroy something, and it's his like character, in the orange jumpsuit and this laser rifle, but the whole time they call him Grand Slam. So like even the writers can't remember who he is, which is kind of a shame, because he does look pretty cool. Up next, Snake Eyes. Yeah, enough said there. Next up we have Grunt. Grunt I always thought was kind of boring. His action figure isn't very cool. Like it's just a green jumpsuit military guy. In the comics, he does lot of cool things in the comics. He pops up quite a bit. He actually gets a bit of character development. He ends up leaving the Joe team to pursue his own path in life, which is kind of cool. And he comes back up in the later run where the Joes have to rescue him in Sierra Gordo. But I don't know, Grunt's not super iconic. He's not my favorite. He doesn't leave a whole lot of lasting impact. I think I gotta go B on him. Up next we have Rock and Roll. So Rock and Roll is another really, really cool Joe, I think. The first big machine gunner for the Joes. He got the big old, orange beard. The action figure captures him really, really well for the original 82 line. He's in the comics a lot, paired up, especially with Clutch a lot. He does a lot of cool things, but he's not on par with Clutch. I like Clutch just a little bit more than Rock and Roll, right? That's just my personal opinion. I know a lot of people actually think Rock and Roll is way better than Clutch, but I think Rock and Roll is an A tier Joe for me, not quite an S tier. Now, an S tier Joe we have is Scarlet. Scarlet's probably one of the, besides Snake Eyes and Duke, is probably the most iconic Joe. She especially in the comics paired up with Snake Eyes is always really, really nice and cool. They'd have a lot of good character moments together, and she's pretty cool. Not going to get into Ninja Force Scarlet just yet, but original 82 line Scarlet is pretty awesome. She's definitely S tier. Now, up next we have Short Fuse. So maybe a bit of a hot take, or maybe not, I don't know, but I think Short Fuse kind of sucks. For several reasons. First of all, Short Fuse doesn't do much of anything in the comics. He only pops up a couple of times in the original 10 issues where he made his debut, right? So he's not, he's very much a blank slate. And, one of the way to tell him apart, besides the mortar, is he wears like those aviator sunglasses. And, this action figure didn't have that, which really sucked. They kind of, made that better in his 25th anniversary version, but the original 82 figure didn't have his glasses. And, even right here in this little picture for the box art, no glasses. But, Short Fuse as a character definitely sucks. He doesn't do anything. He shows up only a couple of times. I mean, he's cool when he shows up, right? He always, hits his target, but definitely not a very memorable Joe. Up next we have Stalker. So Stalker is of course a hugely memorable Joe. Also has a lot of good moments with Snake Eyes in the comics, Vietnam battle buddies. Stalker in the comics is super, super cool, and in the show as well. He's only in like the first, I've only vaguely remember him in the show. He's only in the first few movie or, miniseries episodes, but he's pretty cool in the show. But in the comics, he's awesome. He's always like a main character. He's doing cool things, especially paired up with anyone. He's definitely one of the more iconic figures. We finally got him in a classified version just a little bit ago, so super glad about that. But Stalker is definitely an S tier Joe. Up next we have Steeler. So Steeler is the Joe's tank, the first tank driver for the Mobat. Also doesn't do a whole lot in the comics. Like he's there a few times, doesn't do much of anything besides drive the tank, and that tank usually blows up, so he's not even a very good driver in my opinion. But he has some cool moments in the show. I remember like that one, episode where he gets sent with Clutch to a different, alternate timeline where all the Joes died and, they have to, save everything. But even in that episode, he's kind of whining the whole time. So he's not super cool. He's not super iconic. Not super memorable. I think he's a C-list Joe. Now up next we have Grand Slam. Grand Slam, especially the action figure, looks exactly like Flash. They changed his head. I think they gave him Zap's head, so they share the same head in the action figure. But he's got like the same body as Flash. Also, not, super memorable Joe. A lot of these original 13 Joes are either super iconic or not very iconic at all, which is kind of a shame for being original 13. But, Grand Slam, he's a vehicle driver. He shows up more than Flash and Steeler. He makes a few more appearances than everyone, which is, a little bit better, a little more memorable for that, but not a B-list Joe in my opinion. Also, I'm not super attached to him personally. He's all right, Definitely not any higher than a C in my opinion. But that's all 13 Joes. So in S tier we got Stalker, Snake Eyes, Clutch, and Scarlet. For A we have Colonel Hawk, Breaker, and Rock and Roll. B-list Joes we have Grunt and Zap. C-list we have Grand Slam, Stealer, and Flash. And D-list all alone is Short Fuse. I would love to hear your guys' opinions. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Where would you rank all the Joes? Let me know.